Don't try to embarrass yourself, you'll lose this anyway. My ex-wife called me a pack mule and tried to take over my company. Then my unexpected witness showed up, the judge froze her assets, and she finally realized she'd lost everything, including me. Hey Reddit, not really the kind of guy who posts here, but after everything that happened, I think this one's worth sharing. It's about my ex-wife, a courtroom, and how the woman who once called me a pack mule ended up watching everything collapse in front of a judge. Grab some snacks. This might just be one of the most satisfying courtroom stories you'll read in a while. Your Honor, my wife Stephanie said, my husband's like a pack mule, reliable, predictable, and built to carry everyone else's weight. The courtroom let out a few quiet laughs. Even her new boyfriend Thomas, sitting in the back with his arms crossed, smirked like he was watching a comedy show. Stephanie flashed him that same smug smile she used to give me when she thought she'd won an argument. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just stared straight ahead, calm as ever. Let her enjoy it. She'd spent the last 8 years thinking she could talk down to me and still walk away clean. Not this time. 8 years married. I gave her everything. Stability, a house, my time, my effort, and the minute life got easy, she got bored. Found herself a real man, as she called him. A corporate lawyer with hair full of gel, no morals. Now she wanted half my company, claiming she sacrificed her career to support me. Yeah, by career she meant shopping and yoga retreats. But before we even got to this courtroom, she tried to play her usual mind games. That morning, I got to the courthouse early. I was going through my notes in the hallway when I heard the sound of her heels clicking toward me. I looked up and there she was, dressed like she was attending a fashion gala, not a divorce hearing. Thomas was right beside her, puffed up like he was walking into a boxing match. Stephanie smiled like she was already holding the trophy. Try not to embarrass yourself in there, she said. I smiled back, calm as ever. Don't worry, Steph. The only one embarrassed today will be the one who brought her side guy as emotional support. Her smile cracked. Thomas stiffened instantly. Watch your mouth, he said, stepping closer. Before I could even say anything, one of the security guards nearby raised a hand. Sir, step back, he said firmly. You're not part of the case. You cause a scene, you're out. Thomas froze mid-step, his jaw tightening. Stephanie grabbed his arm, glaring at me. I just grinned and said, You might want to save the aggression for your closing statement, champ. That did it. She turned bright red, muttering something under her breath. I walked past them into the courtroom, cool and unbothered. Round 1, mine. Back inside, the air felt heavier. Stephanie sat across the aisle, crossing her legs like she was posing for a magazine cover. Her lawyer, the kind of guy who probably rehearses in front of a mirror, stood up and started his little performance. Your Honor, he began, all serious and polished. My client dedicated years to supporting Mr. Winter. She sacrificed her career ambitions to maintain their home and assist him in his business endeavors. She only seeks fair compensation for those lost years. I almost laughed. Lost years? She'd spent those years buying designer bags and calling them investments. The judge leaned back, unimpressed. I could tell he'd heard this song before. Meanwhile, Stephanie nodded along dramatically, like she was starring in a courtroom drama. I sat there silently, a black folder resting in front of me. My hands were steady. Everything I needed was already inside. Proof, documents, and something she didn't have, preparation. She tried glancing at me, waiting for me to react, but I didn't give her a single look. Silence bothered her more than yelling ever could. Her lawyer droned on for another 5 minutes about her emotional labor and personal sacrifices, before the judge finally cut him off. All right, I've heard enough for now. Mr. Winter, do you have a response prepared? I leaned forward slightly, calm as ever. I do, Your Honor. But before I could start, Stephanie interrupted. Again, he doesn't deserve to respond. He's just trying to... The judge slammed his gavel once, sharply. Mrs. Winter, you'll remain silent until it's your turn to speak. That wiped the smirk right off her face. The courtroom went still for a few seconds. Her lawyer tried whispering something to her, probably telling her to sit tight, but she was too angry to listen. She glared at me instead, and I just raised an eyebrow, amused. The judge adjusted his glasses, then looked down at my documents briefly. Mr. Winter, he said slowly, I've reviewed your preliminary filings. Let's just say this case may take an unexpected turn. Stephanie froze. The color drained from her face. Even Thomas, sitting in the back row, sat up a little straighter. I didn't say a word, just gave a small nod and leaned back. She'd spent months planning this performance, and she had no idea that I'd already written the ending. As the judge called for a short recess, Stephanie turned toward me. You think you're clever, don't you? She hissed. I gave her a faint smile. Not clever, Steph. Just patient. She called me a pack mule. I guess she forgot. I'm the one who carried everything, including the evidence. And as far as I was concerned, this wasn't her victory lap. It was her last ride. Before I continue, let me tell you about Stephanie. If you'd met Stephanie back then, you'd think she was perfect. That was her specialty, presentation. She had a smile that could convince a priest she needed business funding for designer handbags. I met her when she was working front desk at a co-working space. Smart, funny, ambitious, or at least she acted like it. She told me she loved how driven I was, how I had that builder's mentality. Back then I thought she meant it as a compliment. Turns out she saw a builder and thought, good, he'll build something for me to live off. The first 2 years weren't bad. We worked hard, ate cheap, laughed about nothing, and talked about building a future together. She'd say things like, when your business takes off, we'll travel, or you'll have your company, I'll have mine. I really believed we were a team. Then my business actually took off, and that's when she changed. It started small. She said she wanted to quit her job to help me. I thought, sure, she could manage invoices or do client calls. But a month later, she wasn't helping with anything except spending. She said she needed time for self-care, which somehow meant daily brunches and new outfits every week. The first time I questioned her about the credit card bill, she rolled her eyes. You're so uptight, Daniel. It's just money. You act like you're poor. That line stuck. She said it like money magically appeared in our account every month without me sweating through 16-hour workdays. Social media became her full-time job after that. She'd post selfies with captions like boss wife vibes or behind every successful man is a woman who made it possible. I didn't even care about the posts. What annoyed me was that she actually believed her own captions. When I told her I wanted to grow the business, expand, hire more people, she said I was obsessed. You're addicted to work. You don't know how to relax. She made it sound like ambition was a disease. But she loved the lifestyle that came with it. The car, the apartment, the trips. She'd spend hours picking out vacation outfits for places I didn't even want to go to. Half the time I was on calls while she was taking pictures by hotel pools. Then came her brilliant idea. She said she'd talked to a financial advisor who told her it'd be smart to add her name to the company for tax purposes. She framed it like it was helping me. I didn't question it then. I thought that's what a good husband did. Trust his wife. That decision haunted me later. I know I'm the biggest idiot you don't have to tell me. Once her name was on the company papers, she acted like she owned it. Started calling it our business in conversations with her friends. She'd walk into my office and say things like, we need to invest in branding, or we should hire a PR agency, as if she knew what those things meant. Meanwhile, she wasn't lifting a finger. There was one afternoon I'll never forget. I came home from a brutal meeting. Client delayed payments, payroll was tight, stress everywhere. She was sitting on the couch, glass of juice in hand, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and said, you look tired. Maybe you should hire someone to do your part. I stared at her for a full 10 seconds before saying, my part? She didn't even blink. Yeah, you're always so serious. Let someone else handle the heavy stuff. That was the first time it hit me. She didn't see me as a husband anymore. She saw me as a machine, a reliable, predictable, load-bearing machine. From that point on, I stopped telling her about business decisions. She'd lost the right to that part of my life, but she didn't stop. The more the company grew, the more she acted like she was the mastermind behind it. She'd talk to my employees like she was the boss's boss. Once, during a team dinner, she actually said, we wouldn't be here without my support. My guys went silent. I smiled through my teeth, pretending it didn't bother me, but it did. Then she started dropping comments like, you've changed. You used to be fun. No, Stephanie, I didn't change. You just stopped pretending. The tipping point came one night after a company event. I was exhausted, still in my suit, trying to unwind. She came in, already in bed, scrolling on her phone. She looked up and said, I think we should start taking separate vacations. Separate? I asked. Yeah, she said, like it was obvious. We have different needs. You like work. I like life. That's when I finally understood. She wasn't just distant, she was gone. After that, I stopped arguing. I stopped explaining. I just nodded, smiled, and started paying attention to the details. What she bought, what she said, where she went, who she messaged. Because deep down, I knew she wasn't looking for a partner anymore. She was looking for her next provider, and I wasn't about to be the last one. That's when I stopped explaining myself and started preparing. It started with small red flags. I'd check the company account and see charges that didn't make sense. Luxury stores, fancy restaurants, weekend hotel stays labeled under marketing or client networking. At first, I thought maybe my accountant mislabeled something, but the numbers didn't lie. $2,000 for brand promotion at a boutique resort, another $500 for office supplies from a jewelry store. I wasn't running a modeling agency. One afternoon, I opened the company card records and saw a line that made everything click. Dinner meeting, Thomas W. Thomas. The same guy who'd show up at every networking event she attended. The guy who was supposed to be a corporate lawyer friend. He wasn't just a friend. He was the leak. I didn't yell, didn't accuse. That's what she wanted, an emotional reaction. Instead, I kept my face blank at home, acting like everything was normal. When she asked how my day went, I said, productive. Every calm word I gave her bought me time. First thing I did was talk to my bank manager. Quietly. I explained there were unauthorized expenses on a joint business card. He helped me open a new account in the company's name, but under a new LLC, one she didn't know existed. Within a week, all incoming client payments were rerouted. Stephanie's card was still active, though. I wanted her to keep spending. I wanted the trail. Meanwhile, I contacted a buddy from college, Nathan, a forensic accountant who'd handled messy fraud cases. I told him I suspected internal misuse. Didn't mention it was my wife. He came by my office after hours with a flash drive. "Send me your transaction logs," he said. "Give me a week." In the meantime, I started watching patterns. She'd leave on client trips every other weekend. One night, while she was in the shower, I scrolled through her work emails. She'd left her laptop open. Half the emails were trash, but one thread stood out. Messages with Thomas. Thomas sent her, "Don't forget to expense the dinner. Use the networking tag." Stephanie replied, "Done. He never checks that stuff." He replied back, "You're lucky. Most men would notice." She mocked, "Mine's too busy playing entrepreneur." That was all I needed to see. The next day, I went to my lawyer and had him review the ownership papers. When Stephanie had convinced me to add her name to the business, it was under a partnership clause that allowed me to reassign management rights in the event of misconduct. The kind of fine print no one reads, except me. Within 2 days, I filed a restructuring motion. Quietly, legally, perfectly clean. She still thought her name held power. She didn't realize it was just ink now. Nathan called back a few days later. "You were right," he said. "Whoever's been using that card's been creative, but not smart. I can trace every transaction. Want a report?" "Every detail," I said. He sent me a spreadsheet that read like a shopping diary. Trips under corporate events. A car rental for a client commute in another city, the same weekend she said she was visiting her mother. And at least 6 transactions linked directly to Thomas's personal Venmo and business card. She'd been transferring company funds to him under consulting fees. I remember sitting there, staring at the numbers, calm as stone. There was no sadness left, just strategy. From there, I built my case like I'd build a project, step by step. I archived emails, downloaded statements, kept printed copies off-site. I even recorded one of her phone calls when she bragged to a friend about knowing how to handle money better than my husband. She thought she was invincible. I was just making her feel that way a little longer. I'd already prepared a separate folder for my lawyer titled Stephanie Winter, Financial Misconduct. Every single fake expense was documented, categorized, and time-stamped. The day I printed that screenshot, I knew she was done. Any client payments she'd messed with, I refunded immediately. I remember Nathan calling again, his voice amused. "You want me to file this officially?" "Not yet," I said. "She's going to file first. Let her think she's in control." He laughed. "You're playing chess." "Exactly," I said. "And she still thinks we're playing checkers." So I waited. I smiled at her. I helped her pack for her fake networking trips. I even transferred a little spending money into her account before one of them, just to keep her comfortable. When she came home and announced she'd filed for divorce, acting like she was taking charge, I almost wanted to laugh. Because by the time she filed those papers, I'd already drafted her downfall. Back to hearing day. The courtroom buzzed with quiet tension. Stephanie sat across from me, polished to perfection. Red lipstick, diamond earrings, smug little smirk that screamed, "I've already won." Thomas was planted behind her, pretending not to look nervous. Her lawyer launched into another dramatic monologue about a woman who sacrificed everything. Same speech, different day. Stephanie nodded along like she'd written it herself. When he finally sat down, the judge turned to me. "Mr. Winter, your response?" I rose, straightened my jacket. "Yes, Your Honor. But before I speak, I'd like to call a witness. He's a pre-disclosed witness, under subpoena, Your Honor." That single line wiped the smile off Stephanie's face. The bailiff opened the door. A man in a navy suit walked in. Mitchell Bell, a respected client and business owner I'd helped keep afloat when his company was collapsing. He carried himself like someone with nothing to prove. "Mr. Bell," the judge said, "state your involvement." Mitchell nodded. "I've worked with Mr. Winter for several years. About 12 months ago, I noticed unusual payments. Invoices redirected to an account labeled consulting fees. When I brought it up to Mr. Winter, he said he was already reviewing internal inconsistencies and asked me to forward everything. A few days later, he confirmed the account belonged to Mrs. Winter." The room went silent. Stephanie shifted, forcing a laugh. "That's ridiculous. I don't even handle those things." The judge raised a hand. "You'll have your turn." Mitchell continued. "When I contacted Mr. Winter, he refunded the payment right away. We also confirmed those transfers were approved using Mrs. Winter's login." Her lawyer blinked, scrambling through his folder. "Your Honor, there's likely confusion." Mitchell pulled out a paper. "No confusion. Here's an email from Mrs. Winter, confirming the consulting fee payment herself." He handed it to the bailiff. The judge read it, eyebrows lowering. Stephanie whispered harshly to her lawyer, panic creeping into her voice. Thomas sat stiff behind her, his knuckles white. I spoke, calm and clear. "Your Honor, I have verified records of every transfer and confirmation email, each under Mrs. Winter's credentials." I slid a folder forward. The judge flipped through the pages, eyes narrowing at the timestamps. "Mrs. Winter," he said finally, "do you have an explanation?" Stephanie opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She looked at Thomas for help. He looked away. I took a breath. Steady. "She once called me a pack mule, Your Honor. Said I was built to carry everyone else's weight. She's half right. I carry my load. She just tried to steal the wagon." A couple quiet chuckles slipped from the gallery before the judge silenced the room with one glance. Stephanie's lawyer tried again, voice shaky. "Your Honor, we request time to verify." "Denied," the judge cut him off. "These records appear legitimate and serious." He turned a page, then looked straight at Stephanie. "Until this is resolved, I'm ordering an immediate freeze on all joint assets and accounts. No transfers, withdrawals, or financial activity of any kind without court approval." Stephanie's face drained of color. "Wait, what? You can't just freeze everything." "I can," the judge said flatly, "and I will." Her lawyer leaned close, whispering frantically. She snapped, "Fix it! Loud enough for everyone to hear." He didn't answer. Thomas shifted in his seat, rubbing his temple, eyes darting between me and the judge, like he'd just realized this wasn't going away. The judge turned another page in my folder. "These are significant claims, Mr. Winter. We'll continue reviewing this evidence before moving on." I nodded once. "Understood, Your Honor." Stephanie sat motionless, hands gripping the edge of the table. The confident smirk she'd walked in with was gone, replaced with a frozen stare. Her lawyer cleared his throat. "Your Honor, perhaps we can—" "Sit down, Mr. Parker," the judge said sharply. The sound of his chair scraping against the floor was the only noise in the room. Stephanie finally leaned back, eyes glassy, muttering under her breath, "This isn't happening." It was, and it was only the beginning. The judge flipped to the next section of my submission, scanning quietly, the air thick with tension. Thomas shifted again, sweat gathering at his collar. I kept my hands folded, steady. Everything was moving exactly as planned. Stephanie glanced my way, searching for a reaction. I gave her none. Because the real damage, the part that would end her and drag Thomas down with her, was still sitting in the next folder, waiting for the judge to read it. But not yet. Stephanie's money was frozen. Her lawyer was rattled. Thomas was cracking. And for the first time since this began, she finally looked scared. Stephanie sat stiff in her chair, frozen like a statue. The smirk she wore into court had completely vanished. The only sound in the room was the rustle of papers as the judge flipped through the evidence from the witness testimony. Her lawyer leaned toward her, whispering fast. She didn't even blink. Thomas sat behind her, pretending to read something on his phone, though his knee was bouncing like a drumbeat. The judge set the folder down. "Mr. Winter," he said, "you mentioned in your earlier filings there were additional discrepancies beyond what we just discussed?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said, standing. "I'd like to submit supplemental documentation." I picked up the black folder I'd brought, thicker than the last one, and handed it to the bailiff. Stephanie's eyes followed it like it was a ticking bomb. The judge opened the file and started scanning the pages. "Explain these," he said, without looking up. "These," I began evenly, "are the records of every fake expense Mrs. Winter filed through my business accounts. Trips labeled as client development, jewelry as professional gifts, and a luxury apartment lease listed under storage facility. That apartment, Your Honor, is under her name. The rent is paid directly from our joint business account. The gallery murmured quietly. Stephanie whipped around to glare at me. You're unbelievable, she said under her breath. I ignored her. The judge flipped another page, his expression darkening. Mrs. Winter, he said, is this true? Stephanie forced a laugh, too high-pitched. That's ridiculous. Those were all legitimate expenses. I worked with my husband's clients all the time. Which clients? I cut in, calm. She froze. Because I've contacted every one of them, I continued, and not a single person recalls a single meeting with you. Not one. Her lawyer tried to jump in. Your Honor, this is clearly an attempt to... The judge raised a hand, silencing him. Mr. Winter, do you have receipts or supporting documentation? Yes, Your Honor. I opened another folder and laid out the statements, each labeled, dated, and signed off under her name. Every single transaction accounted for. Thomas leaned forward slightly, trying to keep his composure, but the sweat on his forehead said otherwise. The judge went quiet, studying the records. When he finally spoke, his tone was ice. Given the scope of these claims, I'm ordering a full forensic audit of all marital and business accounts tied to both parties. Effective immediately. Stephanie's jaw dropped. What? No, that's insane. You can't just dig through everything I've ever done? Her lawyer tugged at his tie, whispering something she ignored. This isn't optional, Mrs. Winter, the judge said. Given what I'm seeing, it's necessary. The panic finally broke through her mask. This is harassment! He's doing this to punish me! Actually, I said, cutting her off quietly, I'm just tired of being stolen from. The judge looked over his glasses at her. Mrs. Winter, you'd be wise to stop talking. She sank back into her chair, fuming. The judge turned back to me. Is there anything else you wish to submit before we proceed? Yes, Your Honor. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a small USB drive, holding it between my fingers. This contains audio recordings made in my home office. The state allows one-party consent. These recordings capture Mrs. Winter and Mr. Thomas discussing their plan to bleed me dry before filing for divorce. They were on speakerphone in my home office while I was present. The entire room fell silent. Thomas went pale. Stephanie spun in her chair toward him, eyes wide. What recordings? The judge motioned for the bailiff. Bring it here. As the bailiff took the drive and handed it to the court clerk, I kept my eyes on Thomas. His confident, polished composure had completely cracked. The judge read the written summary attached. According to this, the recordings detail both Mrs. Winter and Mr. Thomas, coordinating financial movements with intent to misappropriate marital funds. Is that correct, Mr. Winter? Yes, Your Honor, I said steadily. Every line is time-stamped and backed by matching transactions. You'll also find excerpts where they discuss manipulating the company's value before the divorce settlement. Stephanie's lawyer finally found his voice. Your Honor, this evidence was obtained without full consent. The judge cut him off. In this state, one-party consent applies. Mr. Winter was legally within his rights. Stephanie slammed her hand against the table. You're lying. You planted something. The judge snapped, Enough! The echo of his voice filled the room. Stephanie froze. Thomas swallowed hard, trying to keep his eyes off the judge. The judge turned to him. Mr. Thomas, you're named directly in these conversations. Do you deny participating in them? Thomas stammered. I don't recall. Of course you don't, I said, cutting in smoothly. But I'm sure the recordings will jog your memory. The judge tapped his pen against the desk, irritation creeping into his tone. If what Mr. Winter has presented is accurate, both of you may be facing civil and criminal consequences for financial fraud. I strongly advise you to consult counsel before saying another word. Stephanie looked like she'd been slapped. Criminal, she whispered. Thomas rubbed his temples, avoiding her gaze completely. Her lawyer sank back in his chair, pale and silent. You could tell even he knew the game was over. The judge signaled the bailiff. These materials will be submitted for review. We'll reconvene once the forensic audit is complete. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. Everything I'd spent months preparing was now sitting in the court's hands. Undeniable, time-stamped, and devastating. Stephanie stared at me with pure hatred, but underneath it I could see it. Fear. The kind that comes when a liar finally realizes the story's over. Thomas leaned forward, whispering something sharp at her, but she didn't respond. She was gone. The judge closed the file. Mr. Winter, thank you for your cooperation and thorough documentation. Always, Your Honor, I said quietly. Stephanie's lawyer sat motionless. Thomas wiped sweat from his forehead. And Stephanie? She just sat there, breathing shallow, staring straight ahead like her world had just collapsed. She wanted a payout. Instead, she got a paper trail. The courtroom emptied in slow motion. People whispered as they left, a low hum of disbelief filling the air. Stephanie sat slumped in her chair, staring at the table like it might swallow her whole. Her lawyer was already packing up, avoiding eye contact. Thomas looked like someone had unplugged his soul. I stayed seated for a moment, just taking it in. Months of quiet planning, finally playing out exactly the way I wanted. The judge exited. The bailiff collected evidence. And Stephanie finally snapped back into motion. "Thomas!" she hissed, twisting in her chair. "Say something! You're just going to sit there?" He didn't answer. He just stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. "Thomas!" she snapped again, louder this time. He stood up suddenly, the chair scraping behind him. "Don't," he said sharply. "Don't you dare talk to me right now." She blinked at him, stunned. "You're just going to walk away? After everything I did for you?" Turns out, she hadn't just funneled money through his Venmo and cards. She'd even used his firm's letterhead and business accounts on a few of her fake invoices to make them look legitimate. He turned, eyes burning with anger. "Everything you did? You dragged me into this. You forged payments using my firm's name, you idiot. Do you have any idea what this looks like for me?" Stephanie's voice dropped into panic. "We can fix it. You have connections." He cut her off, voice low but venomous. "No one can fix this. You ruined both of us." She reached out to grab his arm, but he yanked it away and stormed toward the exit. The bailiff moved aside to let him pass, shaking his head. Stephanie stumbled after him into the hallway. "Thomas, please, don't do this. You said we were a team." He didn't even turn around. "We were, until you made me an accessory." Her voice echoed down the corridor. "Thomas!" But he was already gone. I stepped into the hall just in time to see her standing there, tears streaking down her perfect foundation, her voice cracking as she tried to call after him again. Security stood nearby, watching, but not intervening. Stephanie noticed me then. "You think you've won?" she spat, voice trembling. I paused for a second. "Yes," I said calmly. "And you just finally lost." She went silent, her mouth opening like she had more to say, but no words came out. The guard stepped slightly closer, just in case. I didn't bother looking back as I walked out the front doors. Weeks passed. The story spread quietly among the local business circle. Not gossip, just facts. Stephanie's accounts remained frozen. Every cent was under review. Her business ventures disappeared overnight. The designer bag stopped showing up on her social media. The luxury apartment she'd rented under my company's name was repossessed within days. She became the target of a full financial investigation. The emails, the fake invoices, the forged payments. It all came back to her. Meanwhile, Thomas's career imploded. His firm suspended him the same week the judge ordered the audit. 2 days later, he resigned before they could fire him. The official statement from his firm was one sentence long. "We do not tolerate unethical conduct." Stephanie tried to reach out to him. I heard from a mutual contact, but he never responded. He'd gone completely silent. From what I gathered, he'd moved to another city, started over, and wanted nothing to do with her. I didn't celebrate. I didn't need to. Watching it all fall into place was enough. Back at work, things had shifted. The hearing had made an impression. Clients who'd kept quiet during my marriage now reached out, telling me they respected how I handled everything. "Professional and strategic," one said. "Didn't even lose your temper." I smiled at that. They had no idea how much restraint it took to stay calm through all of it. Business grew. I hired new staff, took on bigger contracts, and for the first time in years, I slept easy. No late-night arguments, no guilt trips, no manipulation disguised as love. My mornings were simple again. Training, coffee, focus. I rebuilt my routine the way it should have always been. Structured, disciplined, mine. Every once in a while, I'd catch myself remembering the version of her that existed before the entitlement. The woman who'd once laughed at bad jokes and dreamed small. Then I'd remember the last version, the one who thought she could outsmart me. The one who called me a pack mule and didn't realize the animal she underestimated was the one pulling the whole wagon. The silence that followed was better than any apology. Then one night, as I was finishing up some work at my desk, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I opened it. It was from "Stephanie, please, we can fix this." No punctuation, no explanation, just desperation. For a few seconds, I just stared at it. Not out of shock. I'd been expecting it. It was only a matter of time. She'd lost everything. Thomas, her money, her reputation, the fake life she'd built. And now, when there was nothing left, she wanted to crawl back to the one person she'd spent years tearing down. I didn't type anything. Didn't even hesitate. I opened the message menu, hit delete, and locked my phone. No reply, no closure, no satisfaction speech, just silence. Because some victories don't need words, just distance. And that was enough for me. Weeks turned into months. The investigation kept crawling through Stephanie's mess. Accounts, statements, fake receipts, all of it. I barely paid attention anymore. The judge didn't need me. The facts spoke loud enough. My life had finally gone quiet again. The kind of quiet that didn't feel empty, just peaceful. My mornings were consistent. Early workouts, coffee, work, sleep, repeat. No chaos, no lies, no drama. Then one evening, a knock came at my door. It wasn't a polite knock. It was the kind of knock that came from someone who didn't want to give you the chance to ignore them. I already knew who it was before I opened it. I took my time anyway. When I finally turned the handle, there she was. Stephanie. She looked nothing like the woman who used to walk into courtrooms like she owned them. Her hair was unkempt, her clothes were plain, and her face carried that hollow look people get when the world stops giving them attention. But she still tried to fake it. She gave me a small, forced smile. "Hey," she said softly, like we were old friends catching up. "Can we talk?" I leaned against the doorway, keeping my tone even. "Talk about what?" She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, her voice trembling just slightly. "Look, I know. Things got bad. I made mistakes. But we had good years, didn't we? We were happy once." I raised an eyebrow. "You sure you're remembering the same marriage?" Her smile faltered. "I'm serious, Daniel. I lost control of things, okay? I let other people influence me. But that doesn't mean it was all fake." "Right," I said dryly. "So, when you called me a pack mule in front of a courtroom, that was love language." She winced. "I was angry. You know how I get when I'm cornered." "Yeah," I said. "You destroy everything around you." The silence stretched. She shifted her weight, realizing the sympathy act wasn't landing. Her voice cracked. I need a chance to start over. I'm not asking for much. I just need help getting back on my feet." I folded my arms. "Help? Like the kind you gave me when you drained the business accounts?" Her face twisted. "Oh, come on. You can't seriously still be holding a grudge. I've been punished enough." "Punished?" I asked. "You stole from me, tried to humiliate me, and dragged me to court. You weren't punished. You just ran out of people to use." That hit her. I could see it in the way her shoulders dropped. She tried again, softer this time. "You don't understand. I have nothing left. My accounts are frozen. My car got repossessed. I can't even get a credit card approved. Everyone thinks I'm some kind of criminal." "Wonder why?" I said casually. Her voice grew sharp. "You're enjoying this, aren't you? Watching me struggle?" I shrugged. "I'm not watching anything. You came to my door." Her mask cracked again. This time, for real. "You're heartless," she hissed. "After everything we had. I gave you years of my life." "Yeah," I said. "And you spent every one of them trying to see how much you could take." She stepped forward, desperate now. "Please, Daniel, just help me. Please. You know I wouldn't ask if it wasn't bad." I tilted my head slightly. "How bad?" She swallowed. "I'm broke. I'm staying with a friend, but I can't keep depending on them. I just need something. Anything. A little cash to hold me over." There it was. The real reason she came. I took a slow breath, then reached into my pocket. Her eyes flickered with relief, like she thought I was about to hand her salvation. I pulled out a coin. A single cent. Her expression twisted. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" I flipped the coin once between my fingers, then held it out. "That's what your loyalty was worth." Her mouth fell open, anger flaring instantly. "You son of a—" I dropped the coin at her feet and handed her a small folded note. She stared at it before opening it. Inside, in my handwriting, were the words, "You called me a pack mule." Guess I finally dropped the load. She looked up at me, shaking, her voice trembling with rage. "You'll regret this, Daniel. You think you're better than me? You're nothing without me." I smiled faintly. "I was nothing with you." Her face went red. She started screaming. Insults, curses, old grievances, anything she could throw. I didn't flinch. I just stepped back and closed the door. Her voice grew muffled behind it, then faded completely. A few seconds later, I heard the sound of her heels clacking down the porch. Angry, unsteady, defeated. Then silence again. I picked up the coin she'd left behind and set it on the counter. I don't know why. Maybe as a reminder. Maybe just as a trophy. As I looked around the quiet house, everything hit me all at once. Not the anger, not the revenge, just the peace. She'd tried to destroy me, and she ended up destroying herself. I didn't ruin her. I just stopped carrying her. She called me a pack mule. She was right. I carried the whole damn thing until I decided to drop the weight. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.